Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. I am Simply G, and today I'm going to be showing off all of the things that I got in August. There's a lot here, way more than I expected due to various circumstances. And usually, as you guys who have followed my channel for a while know, I do separate my pickup videos into the first and the last half of the month. But going forward, I am trying to make them a once a month thing, hopefully just to give you a little bit more variation in the types of videos that I'm putting out. But oh my goodness, it does mean that this first one is gonna be long. But I know you guys enjoy long videos, so rather than spend too much time on this intro, I'm just going to get straight into it, and I hope you guys enjoy. So going into anime, there's a lot, and quite a few of these purchases were made in response to the Kyoto Animation fire. If you are unfamiliar, somehow, I don't know how you could be unfamiliar with this, but Kyoto Animation, their Studio One, was attacked by an arsonist, and unfortunately 35 people, incredibly talented, wonderful people within the industry, lost their lives. It is the most deadly, horrific, terrible post-war incident in Japan, and just the fact that it happened to a studio that not only is known for such popular and famous and wonderful titles like Kyoto Animation, but who had such a level of high standards for the industry, how they treated their workers, and for the amount of good they were doing within the anime community. It's just absolutely heartbreaking. So some of these I was going to purchase anyway. Some of them were in response to me now trying to buy all of their works that I have seen. I do own quite a few, and I'm wanting to just finish up getting the last of them. Mainly because although I'm not a huge fan of all of their titles, I don't love all of them. They're all still very good in their own way, and they're very effective at what they do. So the first one was a title that I was going to buy anyway. I'd had it on pre-order for months. The fact that it came out this month is just sort of a coincidence, and that is Free Dive to the Future. So season 3 of this franchise. This is the limited edition and contains both DVD and Blu-ray. And although I find this is probably a less effective sequel compared to the second season, Eternal Summer, it is still a fairly decent addition to the show. It's still fun. There's a lot more characters, and it ties a lot of different parts of the franchise together, which is nice. And yeah, you know, there's nothing really that special about this particular entry to the franchise, but I did like seeing a lot of these characters, especially Ikuya Asahi, coming to the forefront after being just only seen in the high-speed film. This particular limited edition also has a translated booklet, so comparatively to some of the previous limited editions in this franchise, we only have a single keep case for all of the discs, but you do get the booklet, which is wonderful, if only for the fact that it actually translates all of these character profiles. Everyone's handwriting is very in character. I love it. But okay, where is Nagisa? Look at this boy and his high school girl handwriting. I love it. We also have the special talks translated, which are wonderful. Very in character, very funny. And at the end, of course, is a gallery of all of the various artworks from this, as well as, you know, these would have been the covers for certain disc releases, posters, things like that. So that's nice. This also came with a stack of very holographic postcards in an envelope like so, and as you can see, they are all of the ending, of which all of the boys are in very idol-esque outfits and dancing and singing and all of that. The endings to Free are very self-indulgent, but really happy to have this finally. And Free, we are expected to see some more, at least a film to this franchise next year. depending, and you know, I'm always happy for more free, so happy to have this in the collection. Now, in the same order that I made the free order with, I actually grouped a bunch of stuff together. It was Right Stuff's anniversary sale, 32nd or 35th anniversary sale, whatever it is. I also got with that order The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya seasons 1 and 2. This is a show that I've owned in various iterations. It's one of the first I think it was the first Kyoto animation show I'd ever watched, and it's very of its time. I don't think it holds up necessarily as much as it did when it first came out in 2006-ish, but it is still fun for what it is. Haruhi can be excruciatingly annoying, but I do like some of the other character interactions. I already own Disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya, which is the film sequel, and in my opinion the best part of this franchise, but I did want to pick up the show. I've been meaning to get this on Blu-ray for a long time. I did own the limited edition Blu-ray set for a while, but wanted to downgrade just because it's not a favorite show of mine, so I sold that on and was planning to get this release for months and months. Just, again, not a high priority, but recently, and considering it was on sale, I decided to just bite the bullet, as it were. And this contains both seasons, as well as, you may see here, there's an episode guide, so you can actually watch it in various broadcast orders, Japanese release orders, because if you're not familiar with this series, the first season especially was released in a non-chronological order, the episodes. So if you wanted to know the events as they were happening, you had to watch them in a different order. It's all very complicated, but it was a very effective way that Kyoto Animation made this, so it was able to have the large climax of the show happen at the ending, whereas if it was following chronologically the light novels, it would have happened smack dab in the middle and would not have been nearly as effective. So yes, really happy to finally have this again. And, you know, there's nothing really more I can say about this show. It's very famous within Japanese and Western otaku fandoms. Haruhi Suzumiya is sort of infamous for being a girl god who has powers beyond her comprehension that she doesn't even realize. And if you haven't watched the show, it is about a high school club, the SOS Brigade, headed by Haruhi Suzumiya, looking for interesting and odd phenomena. She's very interested in aliens and espers and time travelers. Little does she know, the other people in her club are all of those things. We have an alien, we have a time traveler, we have an esper, and then we also have just a normal guy who's kind of Haruhi's wrangler. So it's, from his perspective, him just observing the strange, odd things happening around this girl in his class, and having to be kind of the mediator between her and the other kids in this club, mainly because they are all observing her and they all are aware of each other being weird creatures, but they can't let her know that, otherwise she will probably reject this world. And, you know, she has godlike powers, it's not going to turn out well. So yes, it's a interesting little show. The second season is infamous for its endless 8, i.e. 8 episodes of the same events. It just again and again and again, which is very effective leading up into the film, but at the time when it was coming out, brought around the ire of a lot of people. And so yes, Haruhi is both famous and infamous for various reasons, and as I said, although it doesn't hold up nearly as much as it did when it first came out, it is still a solid little show. Next is the final thing that I got in that Right Stuff order, and this is not a Kyoto Animation show, but it is one that I wanted to buy for a long time and finally did because of the sale. And that is Tsukika Kire as the Moon So Beautiful. This is a really sweet romance story about middle schoolers and falling in love and first love. And I really appreciated this particular show because not only is it very realistic into the awkwardness of that sort of early teenage years and kind of being in a relationship but not quite, and not having the self-confidence to really put yourself out there. And both of these kids are very relatable. I think they're very realistic 13, 14, 15-year-olds. They're not they don't feel very anime character-esque. They don't have weird, crazy personalities. They don't have annoying, tics that they do. They are just normal kids, both of whom are kind of shy and awkward and anxious. And as I said, they don't have a huge amount of self-confidence, but they are friends and they are interested in each other. And the way their relationship grows is just really sweet and wonderful. And you don't see a huge amount of that in anime or manga, especially with this sort of age group, which generally is when kids are first trying to figure themselves out, figure out relationships, falling in love, as it were, for the first time. It's just really, really sweet. It's only 12 episodes. Check it out. I watched this a while ago and was wanting to pick it up. Just, again, not a huge priority, but considering it was on sale, I finally had the opportunity to. And I hope to rewatch it soon because it is really sweet and I need some of that in my life right now. Next, we have some Australian releases, Blu-ray releases. The first one is one that I bought in preparation for more Kyoto Animation titles, if that makes sense. This is not a series that was done by KyoAni, but the subsequent parts of it were, which probably tells you exactly what it is. But this is Full Metal Panic Season 1. This is an older classic mecha show, action comedy series about a child soldier called Sosuke who's sent to Japan in order to become this bodyguard to a normal high school girl called Kaname Chidori. And what she doesn't realize is that she has this power of the whispered, and so she has information and knowledge locked into her brain that she doesn't realize, and it allows her to understand and create this technology and these formulas for what is called lambda drivers, which are used for these ASs, which are basically the mechs within this series. I've been reading the light novels recently. They are available thanks to J-Novel digitally currently, and then they are being released in 3-in-1 omnibuses. So if you are a fan of this series already, check out those. They are getting a nice hardcover release. But this is a show that I've seen previously. I had seen the subsequent parts, the second raid and Fumofu as well, and both of those seasons are done by Kyoto Animation and regarded, I guess, as sort of the better parts of the franchise compared to the first season. And then the final season, or the most recent season, just came out last year, and I did just watch that via Crunchyroll, and that was not a Kyoto Animation production. But so this series has kind of bounced between animation production companies for a long time. But yeah, it's a solid little show. I'm not a huge fan of mechs in general, but I do like this one. I think Sosuke is a pretty interesting character, if nothing else. It is very dated. Even the light novels are dated with kind of the tsundere comedy and slapstick comedy and all of these things. I highly doubt that a child soldier would be completely oblivious to some of the things that happen in the series. But my personal favorite part of this show overall is the second raid, which is the more dramatic action side of it. Because if you are unaware, Kyoto Animation, the first season is tries to balance this serious action with this slapstick over-the-top comedy, and it's successful in some aspects, but not so much in others. When Kyoto Animation took over, they had a season completely dedicated to the light novel events this serious action drama, which is the second raid and my personal favorite. And then they made just a purely comedic season as well, which is what Fumofu is. And it is definitely a favorite amongst comedy fans. I don't really like it, just not my type of humor, but it is one that a lot of people quote as their favorite anime comedy. So this series does tonally like jump all over the place, but I think it is still effective in how it tries to do that. This is a pretty solid little show. It's one that a lot of people still love. Obviously, with the light novels, I expect a lot more people have been interested in it recently as well, with the new anime and with those now available again. So, as for whether or not we'll see a 5th season of the show, I don't know, but it would be sad if we didn't, considering the cliffhanger that the 4th season ended on. But yes, it's good, and I've been meaning to pick this up for a while. I used to own the whole show via Blu-ray, but I don't remember what happened. Either I sold it or I gave it to a friend or something. And now I've been wanting to watch it again. So yes, it's one that I found on, I think, CEX for very cheap. So I just picked it up. And again, I have the Fumofu and the second raid, hopefully for the future from the US, because it is impossible to find the Australian releases for them. I don't know, things go in and out of print so at such different times in like the US versus Australia, it's hard to keep up. So if I do have the Blu-ray collection completed in the future, it will be a mismatched kind of Australian-US release mix. Now with some more Kyoto Animation stuff, this is another Australian release, and that is Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. This is a fun comedy, kind of rom-com series about an office worker who she goes out drunk into the woods and comes across a dragon. And her drunken state, she invites this dragon to her house, and then the next day is confronted with said dragon, who is in the body of a very cute girl. And this dragon is in love with Miss Kobayashi. She absolutely adores her, and she wants to become her personal maid / live-in girlfriend. And so the whole story is kind of about the hijinks that then follow. It's a really decent little show. I've heard kind of mixed things in comparison to the manga. I know some people find it a bit too fan servicey, but most everybody does enjoy the anime. For what I understand, I have seen the anime, I do enjoy it, and from my understanding, it is expected to get a second season, although again, because of the fire, I'm not sure whether or not that's still on track as it was, but I'm sure we will see more of this series going forward. I do have some issues with side characters in this particular series, but overall it is just a really nice, heartwarming story about found family. And Miss Kobayashi's relationship with Toru, I think the dragon's name is really sweet. And again, I think, if nothing else, Kyoto Animation has a really wonderful way of depicting female relationships, whether that be romantic or, romantic like in this series, or just friendship like in a lot of their other series. It is nice to see how much value they put into that and how natural that feels. So, yes, it is a nice little show. I do want to rewatch it. Everybody loves Kana, this little dragon here, and there's some very funny moments. It definitely lives up to the hype, in my opinion, and I do hope we see more of it in the future. As to when that is, it doesn't really matter to me, but definitely a favorite from last year, the year before. I don't remember exactly when the show itself came out, but it is one that is sort of a more recent favorite for a lot of people and a lot of fans of the studio. So next we have one of the beloved franchises of Kyoto Animation, a series that I do enjoy. It's very good. It's not my favorite of the studio when it came out, and now I do have others that I prefer. But it is a very solid little show, and again, one that really focuses very well on the female relationships, and that is Kayon. So we have season 1, we have season 2 part 1. This is the US release. As you can tell, there's no ratings logo on there. We have season 2 part 2, which is the Australian release, and we have the film as well. So, as you can tell, 3 of these are the Australian releases. This one is not, because this is impossible to find in the Australian release, whereas conversely, this is impossible to find in the US release. So, it's hard to keep up with what's going on. Again, as I said, with things that are out of print are hard to find, but this is, if you're not familiar with this series, again, somehow it is hugely popular. Definitely one that a lot of people grew attached to and really took notice of the studio from. And it's a story of a light music club at a all-girls high school and sort of their day-to-day lives, the music, the friendship, the tea, and just how they spend their days. And it's really soothing. It's just a really feel-good series. And I think that's kind of how I describe a lot of Kyoto Animation stuff, is that it doesn't necessarily have to be a grand plot. It's more so the feeling, the mood of them that is so effective. And although plenty of their shows do have a grand plot, that's not really they do excel at that, but that's not really why people attach themselves necessarily to shows like this. It's more so the relatability, the emotion, and just the calm and peaceful that you get from this type of series. It's just nice to, if you have had a stressful day, if you're not feeling at your best, if you can watch a show like this and gain some peace, it's done its job perfectly. It's another one that I previously owned a release for this, but again, I think I sold it on. Now I'm wanting to rewatch it, so picked it up. This one I bought via Amazon. I bought this one via Amazon. I bought both of these via eBay, and then this one I bought at a recent sale. So Madman Australia is the company that released this series. The series does have a limited premium edition in the US, which is, I believe, going out of print. So if you are wanting it, pick it up from Sentai. It's not one of my absolute favorites, which is why I didn't want to put down the money for that. But I was planning on getting this one a little bit later because this is quite easy to find, and so it wasn't a huge rush compared to some of these other pieces. But Madman has had a sale this last week, and so a couple of the things I'm going to be showing off next are related to that sale, and it was very cheap, so I picked it up then. So the next thing I got in the Madman Sale is another show that I enjoy for what it is. It's not one of my favorite. I do have problems with it that I think other people don't. And this one is a fairly large franchise now as well, but I don't have any of the other parts of it. I have seen the rest of it, or most of the rest of it, but again, not a huge priority, so I'll probably just wait until they're on sale. But that is Psychopaths Season 1. As I said, I enjoy quite a bit of what this series attempts to do. I like a lot of their plot lines, I like a lot of the cases it follows, but I do think that it has some fundamental issues that just kind of ultimately make the series, this particular season at least, a little bit unnecessary. It kind of doesn't actually achieve anything, which is maybe the point, but it doesn't feel like you've gained much until you see other parts of this franchise. So, you know, I had problems when I first saw it. I don't think my opinion will have changed much, but I haven't seen it in a while, so maybe they will. It does also have a really wonderful openings and endings, which is not something that I tend to dictate to when it comes to buying series, but they are pretty wonderful. Yeah, you know, it's definitely a favorite. If you like darker, sort of dystopic future, cyberpunk-esque type of stories, this is sort of like, it has a different focus, but it's very reminiscent of something like Number 6 with this utopian society. And in this regards, we have individuals who are part of the legal enforcement, sort of the police. So, you know, different perspective there, but also seeing the system failures from within the system is a very interesting and intriguing storyline, and one that has been explored extensively in this sort of genre. So yeah, there's some good, there's some bad. As I said, it's not a perfect series, but if you are wanting something that's darker and that does have kind of a bleak outlook, then maybe check it out. Next, for what I got from the Madman Sale, is something, again, I've been meaning to pick up forever, but it was very low priority, and usually it's really expensive, more so than anything else, and that is a Studio Ghibli film, and that is Isao Takahata's Pompoko. This is a fun little film about Tanuki kind of waging war against humanity and development of their forest and hiding within human society. It's very, very good. It's not my favorite of Takahata's films, but it is very decent for what it is. It's a little bit out there and quirky and weird if you are not familiar with Tanuki, and the way that they try to westernize it and make it a little less weird when it comes to the dub and stuff like that, I do think was quite successful. But when you know the reality of it, you're just like, oh man, this is a weird thing to make a movie about. Because Tanuki are odd little creatures in folklore. But I've been meaning to get this forever, but normally it's like $35, and I never find it for less than that, generally. So the fact that I was able to get this for less than half of that was really, really, really nice. Yeah, and with this I only have one more Ghibli film to pick up on Blu-ray, I believe, aside from Ocean Waves, but I've said this before, I hate that movie. I hate it so much. I refuse to watch it ever again, and I'm not going to buy it. But aside from that, I still need to pick up The Cat Returns, which is also one that is, like, it's definitely not like a beloved film of Ghibli's library. I mean, plenty of people love it or like it, but it's comparatively to something like Howl's Moving Castle or Kiki or Totoro, or heck, even more recent films like Marnie, I don't think it has the respect that those films do, and the dedicated fans that those films do. So I don't know why it's always so much more expensive. I guess because it's not popular, it's never going to go on sale. But that is the last one that I need to get before I have completed my Ghibli collection. And once I do, I'll be happy, because then I don't have to worry about it anymore. But Pompoko, decent little film. Check it out if you haven't. And it is worth a watch, even if it is a little bit weird. The last thing that I got from the Madman Sale, I mainly got because, one, I had wanted to watch it for a while, even though I've heard very mixed reviews about it. But mostly because it was $3, and if with it, I had put my cart over the limit for free shipping, which is basically why I wanted to get it. No, I did want to watch it, but that is The Empire of Corpses. This is one of the Project Ito films. 3 films in all were made. This one, Harmony, and something else I can't remember. I haven't heard good things about any of those films, and I don't think I've seen any of them. Maybe I have, but they're fairly forgettable from my understanding. This is the only one, maybe, that I've heard decent things about. It is still fairly polarizing, and it's still, like, not wonderful, but at least the kind of premise is interesting. The Empire of Corpses is a Frankenstein-esque story of a young medical student called John Watson, for some reason, who is trying to, well, he reanimates corpses, and he's mainly doing that in order to keep his best friend, who is deceased, alive. So he basically just wants his friend to be with him alive forever, although he has died. So I think that's the basic idea of it. And then more, is there a war? Something's going on. He reanimates corpses for other reasons as well, and I haven't seen it yet. I only got this yesterday, and I haven't had time to watch anything. So it's only a short film. I want to say, no, it's 2 hours, so it's a film. But yeah, it's kind of one that I've heard, like, oh, it's decent, but it's not anything to, like, write home about. And at $3, I'm not going to complain. I'll watch it, probably be like, oh, that was alright, or that was, that's fine. It served its purpose, basically. And I do want to watch it at some point. Finally, for anime, these are things that I also got with my Right Stuff order with free and stuff like that. And I'm going to put them together because although they're separate shows, they're kind of within the same category. And these are also shows that I previously owned and watched and basically sold because they're DVD, but I doubt that they're going to get a Blu-ray release, at least in the future. In the immediate future, and that is Air, the complete series, and Kanon, the complete series. So if you're not aware, both of these are anime based off of the visual novels of the same name, produced and created by Key. So Key is a visual novel dating sim type of company, and I think their most well-known series or game is Clannad, of course, which Kyoto Animation also made an anime adaptation of, but Air and Kanon were the preludes to that anime. They're not related in any sense of the word, but these were their earlier attempts. Air is an interesting one because although it is focused, it does have a romantic aspect to it. The main focus, the main theme of the story is motherhood and mother-daughter relationships. And so it is interesting in that difference, whereas Kanon is a pretty cut and dry romance-focused series. I enjoy both of these series for what they are, but personally, I find Key series just in general to be a little bit too melodramatic and overwrought and just very wish-fulfilling for me. I don't really find a lot of genuine emotion from them. I know people regard Clannad and Kanon as well as like some of the saddest stuff they've seen via anime. It makes them cry. And whilst I won't say that these shows have never made me cry, because they certainly have, I don't really find them genuine. I find them very manipulating, and they're doing everything they can to make you feel like you need to cry in that moment. And which I have the same problem with things like Anohana and other like very overwrought emotional dramas. It just doesn't feel like a genuine reaction from the audience when the creator is like, cry, you will cry, I will make this heroine story so tragic that you'd be a monster not to feel emotion. It's just like, oh god, it's just a little bit too much for me, which is personally why I find Little Busters it's on my favorite of the key works. I like how focused on friendship that series is versus the romance aspect. There are romantic aspects to it, but comparatively to Ricky in that series, how he's helping the people in his life due to friendship rather than the characters in these series who are helping these girls, saving them from their circumstances. Although kind of through friendship, you know that there's like a romantic aspect to it as well, and it's just uncomfortable for me. So yeah. Air is good, as I said. It has a much larger focus on the mother-daughter aspect of it, and that really is the main theme of the story, more so than any sort of romantic thing, build up of a relationship. Canon, again, as I said, it is more romance focused. It has an interesting mix of like magical realism in there as well. And if nothing else, Kyoto Animation, they're very good at what they do. And although I do say that the series is very manipulating, if nothing else, the fact that this show made both myself and my sister feel bad for this character is a miracle, because she is annoying as all get out. And when it got to her episode, her dedicated episode about her backstory, oh my goodness, there were some tears. But yeah, it's one that I find a lot of the other characters in the story very interesting, more so than the main romantic focus. So I don't know, maybe I'm just old Scrooge with no love in her heart, but I find Canon probably my least favorite out of all of the key shows that have been made, but especially the Kyoto Animation ones. But Air is not perfect. It's shorter. It's a shorter show than both Clannad and Canon, so it's very rushed, a lot crammed into it. The pacing is all over the place. So, as I said, it's maybe less effective in that because you don't have the opportunity to grow attached to the characters in a more nuanced way. I don't know. But yeah, these are kind of standard. A lot of people quote them as some of like the saddest stuff they've ever watched. They're very much tearjerkers. They're ones that people watch when you just want a good cry. And there's not very often that I find those sorts of shows genuine enough for me to not be upset at them. So, whilst they're very good at what they do, I will never take that away from them. It's not necessarily the type of genre for me. But they are beautiful. They're done well. Kyoto Animation did a marvelous job. And I probably will watch them again someday in the future. Just if I need a cry. But, you know. There you go. Before I get into manga, I have a couple art books to show off. The first one being the special edition of Tonari no Kaibutsu-kun, which is My Little Monster. This is a funny high school romance about two kind of socially awkward and almost unlikable characters and their relationship with each other and their friendships and slowly growing to become better people, not just for each other, but for themselves. And all of the stress of high school, as is pretty common for high school romances. It's an interesting one, and I really like how Robiko is able to write pretty intriguing and likable characters of whom are kind of unlikable and just very difficult personalities. If you are not reading this, it has been released in its entirety from Kodansha, but it also, Roboco has a current series called Our Precious Conversations, which is coming out right now by Kodansha digitally, and is very good, and is another kind of two quirky individuals finding love with each other, but also being kind of too awkward to do anything about it. And this is a really nice art book. I like Roboco's art a lot. I do enjoy My Little Monster. I'm enjoying Our Precious Conversations more. But if you haven't tried them, do check their work out. And I'm happy to have this art book. Next for art books, we have the second, well, it's not technically an art book, but we have Le Théâtre de Vie, which is Asumiku Nakamura's collected works from the Gothic and Lolita Bibles. So these are actually like short story collections, but seeing as she doesn't have any actual art books, and looking at how beautiful her artwork is and how interestingly this book is printed, it is definitely one that I picked up for both the art and just how evocative her stories are, the style and these colors. It's amazing. I love them. Yeah, definitely one of my favorite. I like all of her stuff, and I do hope we maybe see more of her titles in English. We are getting Classmates currently, which is a BL work. We've had Usabura as well as Maiden Railways in the past. We need more of her manga. She is incredible, and I love her. And I'm really happy to have the second of this collection. And it finishes up all of her stories that she released under this anthology magazine. And they're beautiful releases. So, yeah. The last art book that I got was Haruko Kumata's Boys Life, which is a collection of her Boys Love manga character art. And yeah, we don't have a huge amount of her stuff available in print. We don't have any of her stuff available in print, but plenty of it is available digitally. This is a more recent art book. There's a lot from her series My Darling Kitten Hair. There's plenty from Shinjuku Lucky Hole, as well as a lot of her other manga. But yeah, I really enjoy her BL. It's I wish we had more of it in print, because I like her style, I like the story she tells, I like her characters and how they interact. It's just, I wish we had more of it. And it's interesting to see all of the stuff that she is able to manage in her BL. I like all of her non-BL work, and I like all of her BL work. And underneath you can see colorful. Those are characters from My Darling Kitten Hair, of which I do hope we see in English properly in its entirety at some point. But yeah, nice little book. It's a little bit, it's a recent release. I got this, like the other two, from Mandarake, and it's new, basically. I don't know if there's anything about it that makes it not new, but it is definitely one to check out if you are a fan of Kumata, and if you're a fan of BL and her BL. Wouldn't really make sense to pick it up otherwise. But yeah, definitely a interesting little book. Oh my god, onto this giant stack of manga. There is a lot here, so fair warning. But first and foremost, have to start with the best and my most happy, exciting release that I received, and that is Volume 2 of Our Dreams at Dusk, Shimanami Tasagare by Yuki Kamatani. As I said with the first volume, this is one of my most highly anticipated series of the year. From the moment it was announced to be licensed to the moment it gets into my hand, I have just been so excited. It's just such a wonderful... This series, this is one where I can truly say the emotions are genuine, and thus it doesn't feel like you're being manipulated to feel certain ways. It feels like these are characters who are reacting in a very realistic way to each other. And I commend it for that. So this is the story of a closeted gay high schooler who kind of falls into this friendship group of these they're like a restoration group. They go around the community restoring old abandoned houses into public spaces, and kind of, not coincidentally, but this group is comprised almost entirely of LGBT individuals of various ilk from the acronym. And so he, through these people, finds a community for himself that he doesn't have, and thus he finds the support and understanding from other people that he hasn't had previously from friends or family or other people in his life. So it's just such a wonderful story about community and the importance of community in trying to find yourself and figure things out and supporting each other. This particular volume, the first volume, is wonderful in showing that the whole series is wonderful in showing that this, although this having a community and having support is very important, it still needs to be something that you internally figure out. And it's okay if that personal journey isn't like a straight shot. There's always going to be ups and downs. There's going to be times when you're very positive and everything's going right, and then there's other times where you just feel hopeless and you don't feel like anyone else understands, and you don't feel like you can do this or to rely on other people. And that's a very, very normal thing. And I think that's one of the greatest things about Kamatani's manga, is how they're able to normalize that. Because I think regardless of your sexual orientation, we all have times where we're not confident about the things we should be or that we think we should know. Everyone is trying to muddle through life. Nobody has all of the answers. And even more so when it comes to individuals who don't, quote unquote, fit the norm. This particular volume is, comparatively to the first one, a little bit more, I don't want to say dark, but a little bit more complicated in that way. We have an individual who isn't really that sure about themselves. They don't know where they fit in or what they're doing or why they are acting the way they do. And that is perfectly normal, especially for an individual of this kid's age. They don't really know who they are as a person, because as a 12-year-old, you don't really know who you are as a person. It's perfectly fine to not have all of the answers, and the fact that they're struggling with this, especially with the family they have, with the upbringing they've had, and seeing them try to rely on other people is just really, really, really heartening. But there are very sad emotional parts to this, and it's not necessarily always going to be happy circumstances that these characters interact. Even when they do understand each other, no one can really tell you how to live your life, or tell you how to react, or how the appropriate way to react to something. So with this volume, we are halfway through the series. If you're not picking it up, I encourage you to try, even if you're not inherently a fan of LGBT manga, or you haven't ever read an LGBT manga. This is one that I think is a must-read for everyone, just with how it not only respectfully and genuinely treats these characters and their personalities and their sexualities and their gender identities, but just with, again, this story of growing up, figuring out who you are, and accepting yourself. I think that's all of those emotions are very universal, regardless of if you've personally been in this situation. But if you are within the LGBT spectrum, this is a must read. I cannot encourage you enough to read this story. The fact that it's written by a asexual, non-binary individual gives it a lot more credence to their own personal experiences. You can feel how much of their own story, their own struggles with their identity comes into play with this story. And I think it's one that a lot of people need to read just for that reassurance and just for that kind of insight that you don't necessarily get from a lot of media for individuals who are kind of a similar age, early teen to mid-late teen, and who are, trying to figure these same things out. It's really, really good. I love Kamatani. I've said this numerous times. I really hope to see more of their work in English. So please pick it up. Please support the series. And I hope you enjoy if you do. Next is another favorite series of mine. And this is, technically it's the penultimate volume, but it is the last volume of the actual story. The last proper volume is just side stories. And this is Devil's Line by Ryo Hanada, volume 13. Oh my goodness, it has been such a journey with this series. I can only hope more people try this series now that it is pretty much almost finished. Volume 14, as I said, is just short stories, kind of epilogue-y side stories to this main story. Although this series doesn't have a complete, cohesive, every plot thread is tied up, I find that it doesn't need to be. That's very true to life. I don't know whether or not this series, I have a feeling this series was cut short, but not in a unsatisfactory way. I feel like although there was a lot of story that Hanada could have told, I think that although she wasn't able to get into, tick off every single box, this plot line is tied up, this thread is finished, it's still a satisfying conclusion. And I love it. I love it, I love it, I love it. I have said this since volume 1. Give this series a try. I think that if you've seen the anime especially, you may be put off via the romance aspect of our main characters, but really that's such a small part of the overall story, and although it's not insignificant, it's definitely important to the story. It's not... I feel like it may have been, and kind of was, very Twilight-esque. A lot of people didn't want to read that, or just didn't find it a very interesting dynamic. I would argue that it isn't like Twilight very much at all, aside from like, oh, we have a vampire character, and oh, we have a human character. But the way that these characters have grown since volume 1 to now in volume 13 is incredible. The side characters, the entire cast is really interesting. They're all really diverse and complete people with their own motivations and their own understandings of things. I cannot praise this series enough. It does have issues. It's not a perfect series, but considering it's Hanada's first serialized work, properly serialized work, at least to my understanding, is incredible that she was able to do so much and explore so much and keep surprising me. It always exceeded my expectations. It, if nothing else, was never predictable. And if you feel like you've read this story a million times before, maybe give this one a shot, because although this sort of monster hiding within human society as an allegory for marginalized individuals, racism, homophobia, whatever, this this actually feels substantial, because not only do these devils exist, but all of these very diverse characters with different backgrounds also exist and interact with each other. It feels like an actual story about diversity because there's diverse characters in it, which is always good comparatively to something like even Tokyo Ghoul. That's it works, but not so much. Yeah, Devil's Line, incredibly wonderful story about not just a love story between our two main characters, but also the story of, I guess, anarchy and sort of civil rights movements and all of these things, all of these facets of society and how we interact with each other. It's just so good. Guys, it's so good. I have read the entirety of the series via Crunchyroll. I don't think all of it is available on there, but all of this stuff and the side stories as well are, and it's really great. So, although I have read this volume, I'm hoping with volume 14, I might actually just reread the whole series now that I have volume 13, but I might wait till 14 and then just binge read the whole thing again because it's so good. It's so good, and yeah, I hope more people try it. Now we have another continuing series with volume 2 of Satoko and Nara by Yupechika. This is the story of a Japanese young woman who is the roommate to a Saudi Arabian young woman, both of whom are university students in the United States. And it's a comedy kind of fish out of water culture clash type deal, not only with their own cultures, obviously Japanese and Saudi cultures are very different, but also their culture clash with the US and sort of Western society. It's really interesting, it's fun, it's nice insight to these characters and their lives, and it's very funny. Although I do have Muslim friends, I don't actually have a lot of like Middle Eastern Muslim friends. I kind of do, but I don't have any Saudi friends, so I do actually learn quite a lot in regards to Islam within Saudi Arabia, and that's interesting. It's an interesting book, an interesting series insofar as it's very sympathetic and positive to that, which is a good thing. That's not something we see a lot in Western representations of Islam, but it's interesting to see Saudi society from a positive representation of Saudi society from a female perspective, which isn't to say that that doesn't exist, but it's just an interesting perspective we don't see a lot of in the West because of various, beliefs differences between the two. And it's interesting. I personally, there's some things that I personally wouldn't be comfortable with in my own life with regards to things like polygamy, so having multiple wives. But the way it's explained in this series does make you understand why it is so accepted or why it's sort of normalized and why people don't have issues with it, which is really nice. It's a totally valid thing and personal choice, and you can understand why individuals may agree to this versus a very Western perspective of no, you have one wife and one husband and a monogamous relationship, unless there are individuals who are in polygamous relationships or open marriages or whatever, but it's sort of a completely different thing insofar as how society perceives that. It's not readily accepted in Western or American societies, whereas for Saudi society, it's normal. It's quite normal. So it's just interesting. It's interesting. And if nothing else, it's nice to have that kind of story being told. And Satoko and Nada are really sweet together. They're great friends, and I love reading about them. All of the characters are really fun and likable, and regardless of where they come from, they are just really relatable people. And I think that's one of the biggest parts of sort of culture clash type series, is to show that fundamentally we're all the same. We all like and dislike similar things. We all have people who are important to us and things that are important to us, and although they might not be identical, we still value them the same way. And that's great. I like it. So Satoko Nada is a 4-volume series. We're halfway through, and it's a slower release, so I don't know when volume 3 is coming out. I do think it is out for pre-order though, so I have to check. But yeah, a fun little series, comedic, and if you want to learn about sort of Islam, I guess in general, but also Saudi culture, then check it out. Next, for new releases, we have Volume 3 of Mob Psycho 100, and dang it, I love this series so much. This is by One, the mangaka of One Punch Man, and this is a story of Mob, who is an esper. He has psychic powers, and he works for a conman called Reagan, helping with, just various spiritual issues, but although that is kind of like the general plot, the main story is his just day-to-day life and puberty and growing up and finding his place and struggling to figure out who he is and to balance his life with regards to being an esper and then just being just kind of a normal, not that interesting guy. And although Reagan's relationship with him is kind of very dodgy insofar as he's being taken advantage of for purposes that are not great, just so he can con people out of money, he's sort of the best role model he can have because he doesn't give him any sort of superiority complex. He doesn't allow him to think he's better than other people. He gives him perspective that other people, including those who'd take advantage of him, wouldn't give him. They'd allow him to think that he was better than everyone else. And it's just really nice. It's really, really nice to see that sort of relationship and to have that kind of assurance from a manga about middle schoolers. And this is wonderful. I personally really enjoy Mob Psycho way more than One Punch Man. I think due in part not only because of Mob and the story and the characters in the story. I find, although it is a comedy, it's just way, way, way more effective. There's a lot more to it, and it's more effective in how it presents the comedy. That's due to, in part, with One's art style as well. People complain about the art style, it not being good, doesn't look, polished compared to One Punch Man. But I think that's part of its charm. Comedic manga, I don't think it has to look beautiful. I don't think you need to have generic anime character designs to have a funny manga. And the reactions in One Punch Man, the reaction faces, are just so much funnier. There's an effectiveness to it that I think the updated art style of One Punch Man loses. Not to say One Punch Man isn't funny, but I don't think that comparatively it's as strong as Mob Psycho. And people may disagree with me on that, but I don't care. That's my opinion. I'm allowed to have it, and I can say whatever I want. It's this particular volume is terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. But I think this is also the first volume that actually gives a little bit more to the story and gives a little bit more insight to the reader about what the story is actually about. Sure, it's about psychic powers and espers and people who can do things with their minds. But fundamentally, it's about adolescence and finding yourself and growing up and figuring things out. We have the finale to the fight that happened in the second volume, and Mob's personal conflict with that. It's just so refreshing to see the sort of personal turmoil and self-doubt that he's going through in a manga where he has cool powers. Like, it's just so nice to see. But also, there's an absolutely terrifying depiction of emotional abuse by family. Not for Mob, thankfully, but for another character. And it's just so incredibly real that it's sickening to read and absolutely so much more effective in scaring the audience, in making the audience uncomfortable and upset than anything else. Truly a horror situation, and I encourage you to try this manga out because it's honestly one of the best that's coming out right now. And one is a immensely wonderful mangaka. They're an immensely wonderful storyteller, and I love it. Next, for new releases-ish, kind of, we have volume 32 and 33 of Haikyuu. Just kind of catching up on the series. I love the series so much. Oh my god, it's so good. Sports series. I'm a kind of a sucker for a good sports series. I don't love all of them indiscriminately, but this one is one. I've said before with Haikyuu that with a sports series, you don't need to be reinventing the wheel. You don't need to have a series that's going to surprise you at every corner. It's fine to play to the tropes if you can do that effectively and with a cast of characters that are likable. And Haikyuu just absolutely excels at this. Hinata and the rest of Karasuno are wonderful characters. They're so funny and likable, and you really want to see them succeed. But by the same token, all of the rest of the cast, including those on rival schools, are also just really great. They have some wonderful personalities and they interact in really likable ways. You can see how these kids, they want to beat each other. They want to, win the thing. But at the end of the day, they're all high school kids. They have the same goal, but they're not inherently villains to each other. And I really, really like that. All too often in sports series, you see rival schools villainized and given these personalities that are just completely irredeemable. And that's not to say that that's not somewhat true to life, but I highly doubt that there's any high school athlete who's just trying to literally murder another team just so they can go win the thing and be the best. It's just like, guys, no, that's not how you encourage people to join the sport. I really love Haikyuu. It's honestly one of my favorites in Shonen Jump right now. I read a lot of Jump. I read it via the app, but I do enjoy a lot of their titles. But Haikyuu is one of the few that I'm willing to pay money for to have on my shelf, because no matter when I read it or how I read it, it's always just so good. And I love reading about these characters. They're just wonderful. And speaking of Shonen Jump, we have the most recent volume of Hunter x Hunter, volume 36 by Yoshihiro Togashi. Oh my god, it's always a good day when we get more Hunter x Hunter. I am a huge fan. Big shill. Loved Togashi's manga, but Hunter x Hunter is by far my favorite. And this is just a really interesting, exciting new arc. I cannot wait for the manga to come off of hiatus again, and so we can get more of the story, even if it is just in 10 chapter chunks, because by God, no matter how much time has passed, no matter what Tagashi's doing, no matter what kind of plot line he's figuring out. It's so interesting. This man can craft such a wonderful, engaging plot line out of anything. And it's smart in how he does it, because every arc is very different, and they kind of ape off of other popular tropes within shonen manga at the time. But the way he's able to take those elements and use them effectively, but also change them and shift them and make them things that you don't inherently expect, is just wonderful. I love this series so much. This cover hurts my heart because, okay, volume 12 is a similar picture to this, and if you compare the two, there's some things that have changed and are representative of that. And again, like with Haikyuu, I find all of the character writing in Hunter x Hunter really, really interesting, regardless of it, whether it's hero or villain or whatever. It's just, you want to read more about these characters. It feels like an entire world that is captured on the page, and it's not just inherently like, oh, this story only exists within this plot line. You feel like there's a grander story, and every arc just continues to expand the world out. The spiders, i.e. the Phantom Troop, who are on this cover, they're kind of the worst villains ever. They're kind of, like, they're not good guys. But they're so interesting, and they kind of are great guys, and you do want to read more about them. And I just, every time something happens, I'm just like, please, oh my god, I love it. And yeah, 36 with really no end in sight, thanks to the hiatuses / just kind of, we're at the beginning of an arc, so I don't know how long this one's gonna run, but I believe Tagashi has said at least it's going to be the same length, if not longer, than Chimera Ant, so it's going to be a while. I don't mind waiting though, because the quality we get is just phenomenal. I know people complain about the art, but I completely disagree. There's no one writing as interestingly as Tagashi does, and if that means that he takes a hiatus every year for most of the year, I'm not gonna complain, because the man deserves it, and he doesn't owe me anything. But I do love his comics, so I would love to read more. It's just such a wonderful series, and if you are not wanting to really jump into the manga because of, I don't know, conceived things of the art or what, the manga is available on Shonen Jump app, I believe, so check it out there if you haven't. But I do also really recommend the 2011 anime. It's great. It's wonderful. It adapts everything up until this most current arc, so you're pretty much up to date aside from what is coming out right now. So yeah, it's good in every iteration, and I hope we see volume 37 in this time next year. Yeah, so Hunter x Hunter, thank you for being just wonderful, as per usual. And we have the most recent volume of the Fullmetal editions. So this is Fullmetal Alchemist Volume 6 by Hiromu Arakawa. This is just, like with all of these Fullmetal editions, just an absolutely beautiful release of a series that I absolutely adore. Yeah, I'm sure this series doesn't really need any introduction, but at this part of the story we're meeting more characters. There's a lot more variety compared to the original anime adaptation. Brotherhood is a pretty close adaptation, but here we're introduced to Ling and Lanfan and Old Man Fu, and so we are getting some more interesting cast members that I think really add to the story. And as we continue to move from here, we do learn a lot more about this world, about the different types of alchemy, how these individuals interact and their own motivations. It's just wonderful. It's so good, and I really love it. Yeah, and it also breaks my heart, which is not fun. Yeah, Fullmetal Alchemist, I think anyone who's watched my videos for a prolonged period knows that I'm a huge fan, and, you know, there's no real two ways for me to say it, but if you haven't read Fullmetal Alchemist, I encourage you to try it. It's a classic, a modern classic, and in every iteration it's incredibly good. Anime, manga, whatever else you like, there's something for everyone with this franchise. I also, even if you're not buying these particular collector's editions, which are definitely for collectors, the hardcover, the updated translation, which is the big thing I really value in them, but also the paper quality, they're beautiful, but there's also the box set, so you can get the entirety of the 27 volumes just out off the bat. There's also 3-in-1 editions, as well as just buying the singles piece by piece if you so wish. There's a lot of ways you can read this series, so you don't have to wait for these Full Metal editions. But if you are a pre-existing fan like myself, or if you are a collector who values like the absolute ultimate edition of everything that you buy, then this is definitely worth the investment. It's, in my opinion, probably the nicest releases that Viz are putting out. I haven't had a chance to see any of their more recent hardcovers. I know that Levias, I think that's the name of that series, the omnibus edition from pictures looks beautiful, but that's not particularly a series I'm super invested in and interested in. But for a classic action series that does mean so much to so many people, including myself, this is one of the nicest editions you can get, and it is nice to see more series get this type of treatment. And we are now at volume 6 out of 18, so we're a third of the way through. We are actually getting through these re-releases fairly quickly, so you're not really going to be left behind and feel like you're missing out too much with this series if you are waiting for these hardcover editions. Taking a break from ongoing manga new releases for a second, I'm going to show off some older releases that I picked up, and this one is very, very old. I didn't expect to pick it up, and it was kind of a surprise, but this is volume 2 of From Eroica with Love by Aoki Yasuko. This is a 70s shoujo manga about a gentleman art thief who is also just like a gentleman in real life, and a spy who are at odds with each other. That's kind of a cat and mouse game. This is classic. This is such a wonderful little series. 15 volumes of this series was released by CMX before going under. And it's an interesting... okay, first of all, there's like 40 volumes of this series, and it ran for nearly 40 years. So it started in 1976. It ran up until 2012. So it is a long-running shoujo manga, and it stays in the style for a long time. It's emblematic of this era of shoujo and the kind of how everything was going at the time, this idea of the European setting and sort of the BL aspect of it. It's just very transitional to this period, and like all good shoujo was at the time, it's so good. I do hope to pick up more volumes of this series, but it's very out of print, very hard to find. Many of the volumes are very, very, very expensive. But I will say that a lot of these volumes are, like, the chapters are fairly self-contained. There are some storylines that are over multiple volumes, but it's not too hard to jump in and just go with it. It kind of works like Conan or Lupin in that sense, where you know, each story is kind of like, there's no real plot progression, so it doesn't really matter where you jump in. But yeah, I did not expect to buy this, but yesterday, in fact, I was at a book sale. Well, okay, it's a bookstore that is attached to this Spine and Limb Foundation here in my city. And so they always have this bookstore open, and they only sell ex-library books from the state library service. So it's always interesting to go in there. You can get a great deal. But yesterday, when I went in, one Friday and Saturday of every month, they actually have a sale. Sometimes that's 50% off, which is what it was for me yesterday. Sometimes they're like, oh, fill an entire bag for $15 with whatever you want. There's just some great deals to be had. Let's just say it's worth spending the time to go. I got this, I got a couple other things, novels and other various prose that aren't related to this hobby, so I'm not going to show them off, but I got this for $1. I could not, because every book sale I always go to check the graphic novel or the comic section, not really expecting to find anything that I'm really interested in, and it was the same with this. I saw this, I was like, oh my god, and just snatched it up. And then when I looked inside, I believe the price was $3, but then because of the sale, they reduced it to $1. I am so happy. I do also, because of this, I did find a volume 1 on eBay for quite cheap. And so I picked that one up. So you'll see that in next month's pickup videos, probably. So yeah, really, like, it's, again, not a huge priority that is, at the top of my list, but it was such a weird, happy find for me. So yeah, I'm happy to have it in the collection. Next, we have volume 21 of Kaze Hikaru. This is the one that I needed to fill the last gap that I have with this series. I had up to 22, but without 21. So I needed to pick this one up. I got this off of Amazon. It took friggin' forever to get to me. I don't know why. Amazon has been really slow. And yeah, so this is a reimagining of the Shinsengumi, so sort of the early police force of Japan, and this young girl, teenage girl, who is pretending to be a man, who infiltrates the troop in order to get revenge for the death of her father and older brother. And only a few people know that she is actually a girl, including Okita Soji, who is this character here, who is an actual person, a historical figure. Everyone in this manga is kind of an actual historical figure, except for our main girl. So it appeals to history buffs. It does follow history quite closely, and Watanabe does a great job, or she's very conscious of the decision she makes with representing the time period accurately. Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely a slow burn, like it's a romance series kind of, but it's a historical fiction romance about Shinsengumi, and relies heavily on actual history. So if you are a history nerd, maybe check it out. It's very, very, very slow insofar as, like, if you're reading this for a romance, then you're gonna have to wait a long time before the cogs really start turning. Also, this is 40-something volumes in Japan currently. It's ongoing. It's an ongoing josei series, but we have 27 coming out soon, so it is also a very slow English release. Definitely not a high priority. I would really doubt that it's one of Viz's bestsellers, but the fact that they haven't dropped it is incredible, and I will continue to support them as much as I can because I do really enjoy the series. I like a good historical fiction. I like reading about Japanese history. The Shinsengumi is a pretty interesting time period, or group at least. So yeah, it appeals to me on that level. Yeah. But I do need to catch up with the current releases because, as I said, I only have 22 and there's 27 coming out next month. So a little bit to catch up on. But if you're looking for a interesting josei, or if you like historical fiction, or if you like, historical romance, then give this one a shot. Or if you like Shinsengumi stories. But yeah, it's not one for everyone. I can't, recommend it with a general, like, everyone needs to read this, because I don't think everyone needs to read this. But if you want more of this type of manga coming out, I would greatly encourage you to try this one out, because I doubt that a lot of people are reading it or buying it. And I hope we see all of it in English. I really don't want them to drop this one. Next, for Viz manga, we have volumes 5 and 6 of Dawn of the Arcana by Rei Toma. This is a 13-volume series. It is completed in English, about a young princess with bright red hair, as you can see here, who is married off to a neighboring kingdom, basically just to get rid of her. And her struggles with her personal powers. She has this arcana of time. She's able to have premonitions into the future, and her own personal struggles with her husband, the man she's growing to love, and then her best friend, the most loyal individual to her, Loki, who is an Ajin. Here you can see him. And he has these animal qualities, animal features, super strength. Ajin within this universe are kind of the slave class, the second class citizens. And so a lot of her personal struggle is trying to create equality between the two sides. And yeah, it's really, really, really good. It's hard to summarize the series with just a simple couple sentences, because there's a lot of the story that is a surprise, and I don't want to ruin it for you. But also, if the premise or the idea of like a love triangle or just that kind of thing doesn't appeal to you, I highly encourage you to try this, because it really isn't that, and any kind of expected development goes in a different way. And an understandable way. So it is one that I think is way better than just the initial premise makes it out to be. I'm really glad that I did try it through my library initially, because it's one that I'd heard a lot of good stuff about, but just didn't really know what to expect from it. And having read it, I am super duper glad that I did give it a chance, and now obviously I am purchasing it because it is very, very good, and I do hope to reread it. Rei Toma also has an ongoing series. It's complete in Japan. I don't know if it's yet complete in English. The Water Dragon's Bride, or something along those lines. Which I have not read. I do want to read, but again, not a super duper high priority, but many people may be more familiar with that series. If you haven't tried Dawn of the Arcana, if you just skipped over it or you just weren't even aware of it, give it a shot, because it's very, very, very good. Next is the most recent volume of Yona of the Dawn, volume 19 by Mizuho Kusanagi. This is a really wonderful fantasy drama series about a young princess who has to collect, I guess, or meet 5 or 4 dragons of legend in order to get her kingdom back after her father was murdered by her cousin, of whom she prior had a relationship with and was in love with. And this series just continues to be wonderful, just gets better and better and better. I really encourage people to try this one, especially if you haven't, just because there's a lot of really interesting things. I've said it before with this series, but it's very evocative of this type of fantasy series, which was more popular in the late 90s, early 2000s, and it's been a while since we've had a really good one come out in English. It's so good. It just continues to be good. I love it. And yeah, I can't really say much in regards to this series that I haven't said 4 million times before. But Yona is wonderful. All of the dragons are wonderful, and their interactions with each other are great. There's a lot of very humorous things to it, but it can be very serious, and the drama does actually hit very hard when it does get to that point. I also really like Suwon, the cousin, sort of the antagonist, his story, and all of the things that he does throughout the series and his perspective and how that changes our perspective. It's just, yeah, really, really well done. And Yona is always wonderful. So, volume 19, I think there's 30 volumes. The 30th volume just came out in Japan, so we are catching up, but not like too quickly. It is quite a fast turnover for this series, so hopefully we will catch up at some point, but it is a longer one as well. That might be a bit of a hesitant thing for a lot of people, but definitely worth the amount of time and the amount of volumes it has currently. It does keep building and getting better and better and better the more you go along with this series. Next, we have some Akiire, which I'm super excited about. We have volume 2 of Go With the Clouds North by Northwest, and this is a beautiful mystery, magical realism story about a young man with magic who kind of is an odd job detective. He kind of helps people with their problems, and meanwhile, he also there's a larger mystery surrounding his brother who has followed him, I guess, to Iceland, where he's living with his grandfather. Because he left his brother with their aunt and uncle, but the aunt and uncle died, and so there's the mystery as to, like, what happened? Was it his fault? And we don't really know. It's an interesting story, and Akiire, if nothing else, can really craft a beautiful, evocative, enveloping setting, and you really fall into it and are captured by not just the characters, but the world that these characters live in. And I personally think that out of the 2 series of hers that we have currently, this is way easier to recommend than Ran in the Grey World, although I do enjoy that for what it is. This is really, really good. I really like the incorporation of the mystery and how easily this magic aspect is introduced to the story as well. It's just really good. I really, really enjoy it. It's beautiful. I'm a big sucker for Harta series, the magazine in which this series is serialized, and you'll see that in upcoming books as well. So I always have to give these sorts of series a try. I really like Akiire. She is beautiful with her work and her characters, and even if I don't really love a lot of the storylines that or story elements that she chooses to put in her manga, she still does it in a very effective way. So, yeah, Go With the Clouds North by Northwest is beautiful. The second Akiire work is, as previously mentioned, Ran in the Grey World, Volume 4. I haven't had a chance to read this one, so I cannot give my usual, disclaimer about the issue with this series insofar as, like, sexualization of a minor and a totally inappropriate relationship with a much older man. But for all its problems, I still do like it. I think there's I mean, this may sound like a joke, but there's a magical quality to Ran in the Grey World, and I really like the interaction of Ran and her family, as well as Ran and like fellow kids within her class and around her. I don't like, the romantic aspect of it is gross and weird and creepy, but you know, it's there. Some people don't find it that weird or don't have an issue with it. I do. But there's enough to this series that I enjoy that I kind of forgive it, that, you know, I'm maybe not as strict as some people when it comes to this sort of thing. But yeah, it is a very, very, very beautiful. I am hoping to read this volume soonish. I just got it yesterday and I haven't been at home, so I haven't had the chance to read it. I literally got it today. So I'm looking forward to it. There's only 7 volumes in this series overall, so I know we're over halfway through, and so far it's been really good. Like there's points where I'm like, oh god, but then there's way more points where I'm like, yay, I love this, or this is really interesting, or really cool, or oh, that's so magical. So, you know, you take the good with the bad, but it's not one that I can readily recommend for everyone to read, if that makes sense. And if you are particularly sensitive of the issues that I kind of mentioned already, then give this one a skip. But don't give Go With the Clouds North by Northwest a skip, because that one doesn't have these issues. Or at least not yet, it doesn't. Now we have volume 2 of Blank Canvas, My So-Called Artist Journey by Akiko Higashimura, a wonderful autobiographical manga about Higashimura's own struggles with becoming an artist and her ups and her downs and trying to figure out who she is and what she wants to create and how she wants to create. It's so good, guys. Oh my god. I'm a huge Higashimura fan anyway. I think, you know, she's one of the best josei mangaka with her work right now. She is marvelous, and with this volume, I think this is a must-read for anyone who creates things, whether you're an artist or a writer or an animator or, you know, anything. You create anything of any type. This story is one that I think people need to read, because it actually shows the struggle of an artist, of having to put in that time and energy and practice, and you think you're hot shit, and then you realize, oh no, I don't know anything, and it's a rude awakening, but it's a needed one, and it's just so refreshing to see that kind of struggle put into words, and not, you know, hidden as like, oh yes, I was born talented and I've been good at this shit since I've been alive. Like, that's just not realistic. And for such an incredible, accomplished artist like Higashimura, it just gives it so much more levity than it would from someone else. It's so good, guys. I am a huge Higashimura fan, as I've said, and I love all of her different works. All of them are different, but with similar themes, and I think that's what makes her stuff so relatable, is that they're universal, and regardless of who you are, where you are in your life, and like your background, your gender, whatever, these are all things that are just inherently human in feeling. So it's not like you have to be a high school girl who is an artist in Japan to relate to this. It's just really, really, really good. And it's only 5 volumes. And as I said, if you're a creative of any sort, then this is a must-read, in my opinion. Next, we have Volume 2 of O Maidens in Your Savage season. This currently has an anime coming out. I have not yet watched it, just because I have other shit to do, and I need to figure out... It's on High Dive, I think. It's streaming somewhere. I don't know, so it's not my usual places, so I haven't had to give it a try yet. But this is a really interesting story about a literature club in high school, all girls, and their interest and amusement and distraction with sex and having sex and all of these things, sex's role in growing up and relationships and interacting with the opposite sex or the people you want to have sex with. It's I said this with the first volume. This is by Mari Okada, who is most well known for her anime stuff. She's written some great stuff. She's written some not so great stuff. She's recently directed the Makuya film. Art by this is done by Nao Emoto of Forget Me Not. So if you've read that, it's a beautifully done manga. And although I'm not always a huge fan of Mari Okada's work, similarly to Key Stuff, I find her stuff a little bit melodramatic and overwrought. She did Anohana. She also, even Makuya, there was elements I was like, okay. But Melody of the Heart is another one of her films she wrote, and that was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. There's just certain things that I think she can hit the ball out of the park with, and then other things I'm like, well, that was a bit not very effective. And then there's other things where everyone's like, this is terrible, what, like The Lost Village, or that second season of Black Butler nobody talks about. It's just a little bit of, she's just all over the place. But I do really respect her as a creator. She's managed to achieve some wonderful things and make some incredibly popular series and films and that. This is, from my understanding, her first manga. And so I went into this with a little bit of trepidation. I wasn't sure what to expect. I didn't really even know a huge amount about what the story was, but it absolutely blew me away. This is definitely a positive story of hers, a positive experience that I've had with her stuff, and I cannot wait to read more. I do want to watch the show as well. It's just really, really good, and it was really refreshing to see, because, okay, we always get stories about boys and, like, their adolescence and them trying to figure out stuff in anime and manga. And this is a focus with the female side, but without any of the tiptoeing or around the sexual, physical aspect of it, without kind of thinking that these girls are pure, untouched, individuals who've never even thought about carnal pleasure, which is just not realistic. So it's really nice to see that addressed and in such a normal way and destigmatized. I just like it for so many reasons, and I have real respect for Okada for making a story about that. I also really but I really respect and appreciate how female characters and, like, girls stigmatize each other, and this toxicity in competition with other girls in relation to their relationship with boys and just everything else. And it's just done in such a true nature. And I think that maybe some people miss that aspect, just like, oh, so-and-so's just such a bitch. Like, what a crazy bitch. I'm like, no, she's just playing to the harmful expectations of society that have been taught to her, that to be able to get the attention of the people she wants attention from, i.e. the boys she likes, she has to act this certain way, and she has to get rid of other people who may be in her way. Like, it's so good. It's so good, guys. And yeah, I can not commend her enough. I look forward to Volume 3. Volume 3 has just come out, I believe. It took so long for this volume to get to me. I will be saying that a lot with this video, but honestly, I don't know what's wrong with my mail system. It's just, it's like they want to just hold all of my packages so they can read all the books themselves before then shipping them off to me. It's just unbelievable. But yeah, Our Maidens in Your Savage Season, fantastic series, especially if you like stories about young women and their own struggles with adolescence and puberty and how society perceives teenage girls and how they in turn act because of that. The expectations they're put under. It's so good, guys. 10 out of 10. More Kodansha manga with volume 10 of Again by Mitsuru Kubo. This is there's 12 volumes of the series, so we're heading towards the end. This volume is so funny, but like really painful. And this is the end of the I Want to Die musical, which was the kind of the previous arc where our Oendan was helping the drama club and in turn helping the singular drama club member to realize her self-worth. But then we also have the reveal of a character, the revelation that he's been lying to another character this whole time, and we as the audience knew that, but she did not. And her reaction is, it's very true to life, but also like, girl, you need some perspective. Oh my God, Jesus, never do what you're doing because a boy dumped you. Like, oh no. Yeah, there's a lot of... This series is very fun, very curious. Again, one that I always enjoy reading because it never plays to my expectations. I've thoroughly enjoyed all of Kubo's works that I have had the pleasure of reading or watching. Again, it's such an interesting perspective on the high school experience and second chances and perspective, hindsight, those sorts of things that I really encourage you to try it, even if you think like you've read every time travel manga kind of that there is. This is one that I think, beyond its initial premise, just does a lot of things that as an adult you have perspective on, but as a teen you're like, man, if I had the chance, I'd do that over. But there's things you can change, and then there's things you shouldn't change. And again, that's a big part of a lot of these time travel-y series, but I don't think it's ever done with as much interesting, sort of out left field decisions that Again does. I look forward to the end. I don't know what's going to happen, because every time I try to think of what could happen, that's not what happens. It just keeps continuing to surprise me, and I keep continuing to love it because of that. It's just really, really great, and I look forward to the rest of it. Next, we have Volume 5 of Dead Dead Demons Dead Destruction by Inyo Asano. This is a slice of life sci-fi series about high school girls and living in Tokyo after an alien, invasion, but there's a hovering spacecraft above Tokyo, and how life has kind of changed and also just not changed in relation to that, and how as humanity we are pretty good at just adapting to situations, and even if weird shit's going on, we're like, oh well, that's fine. Yeah, I like Asano's work. I find the stuff that they create is very interesting. There's a lot of dark themes, so fair warning for all of that. And I think it's very purposeful. I know that Asano dislikes this idea of a rose-tinted, nostalgic high school experience, because that is very often not the case for most teens. But this is definitely his easiest work to recommend, this as well as Solonin, just because you know, you have to be in a particular mood for a lot of Asano's works, and a lot of them are very bleak. People recommend Goodnight Punpun, in my opinion, far too readily. It's one that is very depressive, very unhopeful about the world, and very bleak. And for some people, that's just not a good thing to recommend them. That's not what they want. That's not what they need to be reading. And I do think that a lot of people are just like, oh, it's brilliant, it's genius, so you have to read it. I don't really like that type of work, and so thus I do encourage people to be aware that it is a very dark, bleak series before going into it. That's not to say it's not good, it's not valuable, it's not important, but it's not one that I would ever personally reread for the fun of it. But Dead Demons, Destruction absolutely is. Although there's like dark, bleak aspects to it, it's much more interesting. It has a very millennial-esque style of humor in this relatability of like, oh, well, we're all gonna fucking die, so who cares? Like, let's just troll the forums. It's this nihilism of my generation and other, like, millennials, that the world is screwed and we're just kind of along for the ride for it, which is very relatable, I think, to most people. And whilst there's, you always want to be hopeful for the future, there's this element of like, well, we're all gonna die in a giant fiery ball of climate change. So, I mean, who cares if we make dumb shit on the internet? And who cares if this is happening? Who cares if there's aliens? Like, great, that's interesting. Might as well. So yeah, it's really fun and interesting and funny and a nice perspective in that sense. And I think that's something that Asano does really, really well, which is why I think this one is more relatable compared to Punpun. It has a much more general appeal and much more universal appeal, like Solanin did, or does. So yeah, it's just way easier to recommend. Volume 7, I think, of this is coming out, so I'm still behind. But these are expensive volumes for the length they are, so I always wait for when they're on sale. And this one was on sale, so I decided to pick it up. And yeah, it's great. I mean, what else can I say? Now we have Silver Spoon, Volume 9 by Hiromu Arakawa. I love this series. Okay, Arakawa, one of my favorite mangaka, no surprise, of course. But this particular volume of this series is really nice to see. We have Hachiken's mother coming to visit and, understand her son's life, because she realizes that she doesn't really know much about her son and his schooling and everything that's going on. We also, for people who are sensitive, this volume does have the slaughter, the on-screen explanation of a slaughter of a pig, which is, for me, interesting. I've never been to a slaughterhouse. I don't think I could ever personally go. But it's a nice perspective in explaining step by step, like, how we do slaughter our animals for meat and why they go through the processes they do. Again, like with all of the agricultural stuff in Silver Spoon, it's presented in a very easy to understand way and rational way as to why choices are made in agriculture. And whether you agree or disagree with them is a personal thing, but it's interesting to have that perspective in a manga, especially from someone who does actually understand these things and know about them. Kind of also a cliffhanger with this volume, which was interesting. There's a lot of good. I love Arakawa's manga. This series just continues to be very funny, very relatable, a real great story about a kid trying to figure himself out thanks to farming school. I've said this again before. I love Fullmetal Alchemist, but Silver Spoon is definitely Arakawa's magnum opus. It's the story I feel that she's always wanted to write, and it's one that I feel she has the most personal connection to, thanks to her own upbringing, her own experiences with agriculture, and her own understanding. It's just very good. I cannot recommend the series enough, and it keeps, we got at least not another 5 volumes before we're caught up, so we're slowly getting there. But this series is one that goes on and off of hiatus on a semi-regular basis, so I don't know when or if we're getting a wrap up soonish, but we do know Arakawa has said she's trying to wrap it up soon. Kind of. More Higashimura with Tokyo Tarareba Girls. This is the penultimate volume. Oh my god, we're almost at the end. And this is the story, as I've said with every volume, of 3 women in their 30s and sort of their struggles with where they think they should be in life and the expectations society has on women of their age. It's very good. I love it. And I encourage everyone to try it because, as I said, with Blank Canvas, regardless of your personal position in life, your personal spot where you're in, there's some universal things about Higashimura's manga that make it something everyone should read. It's relatable to everyone. You don't have to be a woman in your 30s, unmarried, to feel the relatability of the pressure that these women do, that the society has put on them, and this personal pressure you put on yourself in comparing yourself to everyone else in society. You're like, oh man, I'm such and such age and I'm not married yet, or I don't have a full-time job, or I haven't done this, or I never managed to go to finish tertiary education, or like everybody compares themselves to other people in their lives as well as other people, like the standard in society, and it's not an inherently good or bad thing. Everybody, we all figure our own way through life. There's no correct answers, but that's why I think when these women are faced with this reality of like, oh God, what have we done with our lives? You don't have to be them to know that feeling. So yeah, 1 more volume in print left to go, and then I can reread this whole series because it's terrifying as much as it's wonderful and relatable and just upsetting. Higashimura is wonderful. Read her manga. Now we have some Golden Kamuy with Volume 7 and Volume 10. I do not have the middle volumes between these, but I do have up to Volume 6. I am just, again, getting them when they're cheap. And Volume 10 was very cheap recently. I don't know why. But this is a historical drama action set at the turn of the century, about a soldier, the immortal Sugimoto, who is in search of hidden Ainu gold, and he has befriended a young Ainu girl, and who has her own connection to this gold, and they are trying to find prisoners with a map tattooed on their skin in order to get the map to get the gold. It's violent. It's very viscerally violent. It's very over-the-top, gratuitous gore. But it's also like a really wonderful found family type of story. It has a really interesting focus on Ainu culture, who, if you're not aware, are the native people of Japan. And all of the background with that. There's a lot of really funny, heartwarming moments to this manga, which is kind of a surprise considering how gory and gross the bear mauling and stuff can be with this series. There's also, maybe only I notice. I'm sure plenty of other people notice it, but I notice it in particular because I have a huge interest in true crime. But a lot of the characters in this series, not our main characters, but a lot of the criminals and other individuals they come across, are very obviously based off of famous serial killers. We have an Ed Gein in there. We have someone else, H.H. Holmes-esque character. If you like your serial killers, then dang, you're gonna really enjoy this manga. That's just a curious little aside there. And probably gives you a bit of insight of my tastes. But it is a really interesting manga. I have read up to volume 8, I believe, via the Shonen Jump website. It's not on their app just because it is an explicitly rated series because of the violence and gore. But I am not in a huge rush to catch up with it. It is a fairly popular series. It's got 2 seasons, the 3rd season coming out soon of anime. So I'm sure plenty of people are aware of this series, and if you like very violent action with a side of home-style cooking and comedic family-esque hijinks, then check out Golden Kamuy. For something that has so many disparate parts, it shouldn't work nearly as well as it does. But it does work, so that's a good thing. Yeah, I don't know when I'll be getting more of this series, but I'm sure I'll catch up to it at some point. Now we have some debuts, and oh my goodness, there was 4 this month, and I wasn't expecting that because some of these were meant to come out last month. But again, my mail, I don't know what's going on. The first one is, I think, my favorite of the debuts, and that is Magus of the Library by Mitsu Izumi. This is a fantasy-esque story, sort of set in a Arabian Nights setting, about a young boy who loves reading but is a outcast within society, within his town, because of his pointed ears, his golden hair, his green eyes, his light skin, and also he's from the slums. He is undesirable, so the librarian kind of keeps him out of the library. The only way he's able to get into the library is he's actually friends with the librarian's daughter, so she sneaks him in, or sneaks out books for him, those sorts of things. And yeah, it's his love of reading and books and looking for acceptance and adventure through fiction and through what he's able to read. And there's hints that there was a great race war prior to this book, and somehow our character's related to that. It's just, there's a lot of interesting things if you like. It has fantasy aspects to it, and they're fairly obvious. There's kind of like wind magic, and then there's a race of characters who are very fairy-esque, and all sorts of different things. But it never becomes like, oh yes, dragons exist and there are archmages and that sort of thing. It does play very much into, as I said, like an Arabian Nights-esque type of setting with with a magical element, but where most of it is grounded in a familiar reality. Kind of like Magi in that sense. And although I don't love Magi, it does play to its setting very, very well. But yeah, this is wonderful. The art is beautiful. And I always love reading stories about reading and the awe of fiction and the inspiration of fiction in giving characters an outlet and an escape. It's just really wonderful, and I love a series that can make librarians look super cool, which the series does. That's kind of the point. If our character wants to become a librarian, and librarians are pretty wonderful. They're great individuals, and horrendously misrepresented a lot of the time. Not enough people respect their local librarians. They do a hard work and a good job, and for kind of thankless reasons. So yeah, this was a really wonderful little book, and I really look forward to season 2. Book 2. I must say that this first volume is very much set up to the rest of the story, and so I really look forward to what volume 2 has in store for us. Next for debuts, we have Skullface Bookseller, Honda-san by Honda. This is a very funny comedy manga about a bookseller who works within the comics department, most notably American comics, but their experiences with all sorts of manga fans and customers and all of their co-workers. If you've worked in retail, whether it be in a book selling environment or not, I think everybody can relate to aspects of this. It is very, very funny. The anime was very popular and also very funny. It's only a 4-volume series, and it's very, very good at what it does. There's points where you're like, oh man, yeah, Honda, I've been there. And then there's other times where you've been like, oh, I'm so sorry, Honda, I've been that customer for other people at some point. So, there's a lot of very funny, relatable, kind of embarrassing things, especially as like foreign fans. A lot of this book is related to foreign fans. And you're like, oh man, even if it's not you, someone who's like that. You're like, oh God, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for making your life a little less easy. But yeah, wonderful, wonderful series. If you haven't checked it out, do try out the anime. It's on Crunchyroll. Very funny, very witty, and I cannot wait for the rest of the series. Another Yen Press debut with Cocoon Entwined by Yuriko Hara, and this is a yuri about a Class S type girls' school where all of the uniforms are made of the upperclassmen's hair. Therefore, they have a breathability and a life of their own. And one of our characters is able to feel the breathing of this uniform. This is a very atmospheric story. I mean, I could just say this hair, that's all you need to know, hair. And that kind of does give you just an idea of what to expect. But this story, there's a kind of dreamlike quality to it. It kind of jumps around. I don't think that is inherently chronological that the story is told, but it sucks you into the atmosphere of the expectations of these girls and the school and the social structure and their relationships with each other. There's definitely a mystery around the granddaughter of the headmistress, I think. There's nothing inherent, I mean, it's a yuri, so expect relationships between girls, and there's a lot of like complicated emotions with that. We do get hints of it here, very obvious hints of it here, so it's not like hidden kind of behind things either. But I can't really give a huge impression on like plot, because really there isn't a huge amount of plot aside from this idea that, yeah, we're in a school and all of the uniforms are made out of hair, and that's something that people want. That people go to the school because they want the hair uniforms. I mean, certainly unique. But yeah, this is definitely a yuri that falls more into the atmospheric sort of mood rather than actual events of like watching these characters fall in love. At least with this first volume. I don't know about the subsequent volumes, but it's very popular in Japan. I was intensely curious about it, and it certainly has me intrigued. I'm looking forward to volume 2 whenever we see that in English. Finally, for debuts, and finally for, I guess, quote-unquote normal manga, we have Extravaganza, The Queen in the Iron Mask by Akihito Tomi. This is an udon release, the only udon release that I own currently, although I do hope to get more in the future. And this I mainly wanted to pick up because it's a Harta series, like with North by Northwest and Ran in the Grey World. As I said, I enjoy a lot of the stories from this manga magazine, and this one was one that I hadn't really heard much about. But it made me interesting. I like warrior queens. I like, the idea of an accomplished lady fighter. I am never going to deny a sexy young Harta lady. So this kind of piqued my curiosity, and this is a 2-in-1 omnibus, and I think there's many reasons that a series would be put into an omnibus, but I think the reason for this particular series is that if it was in singles, and I'm trying to be kind here, but if it was in singles, people would not read past the first volume. The first volume is very unsure of what it wants to be. It bounces between very, very overt, perverted, ecchi, fan servicey comedy, lots of boob humor, lots of boobs, and then kind of bounces back to like very visceral action scenes, very effective action scenes, and the art style is beautiful. And as I said, Harta is very good at drawing sexy ladies. And I mean, that's great. I sure do love sexy ladies too. But there's definitely, there is a chapter in the first volume and the second volume. It's the same character. And I'm like, please I hate you. It's disgusting. The gross pervert, gross pervert character. And he just makes every chapter the worst. But I think that, the first volume, it's like, we have like very monsters. We're fighting monsters and they kill people and there's like really terrible. And then next chapter, oops, the queen, she stepped on the hem of her dress and she fell out of her dress and then she was naked in front of everybody. I'm like, can you guys just not? Like, it's such a weird tonal shift. But the second volume, i.e. the second half of this book, is much more consistent. It does still have that really gross old man creeper character, which makes that part excruciating. But overall, there's a lot more focus to the story. It seems like the mangaka figured out what he wanted to do and what kind of story they wanted to tell, because in the second half of the book, the kingdom is attacked by these monsters, and a huge portion of the population is not only killed, but the rest of them are driven out, and they are searching for support from neighboring kingdoms, and they find support in a neighboring kingdom full of giants, and that's very like whimsical and interesting, and it does expand the world out, and I like to see these characters interacting, and again, lots of really like cool lady fighters, a lot of like really interesting societal differences. I love it. But just let's not have creepy old man be creepy and groping girls, because that's, it's just so uncomfortable. But okay, also in this manga, there is no heterosexual explanation for the way that our main character interacts with the other ladies of this series. She doesn't, there's no real, like, there's main, like, male characters in here, but they really don't really, like, have much influence in the story. But, oh man, the relationship that she has with not only her kind of, like, lady butler that she has, her right-hand woman, but also just like her friend, the giantess. Oh my god, there's no heterosexual explanation for that. And I'm not saying that was the intent, but dang it, this queen, she sure got an interest in ladies. Which is which is not something I expected, but is definitely not unwelcome. And yeah, I mean, if nothing else, if you like sexy ladies with sexy bodies and muscles and very shapely figures, then this series is definitely for you. It does have, as I said, starting with the second volume and parts of the first volume, there's an interesting through line of plot, but you do have to get through some pretty terrible fan servicey, comedic, gross perversion, old man being a creep to get to it. So goods and bads. It does make, I am interested in reading more. I mean, I must say it has hooked me. And the fact that it is in an omnibus form, as I said, probably helps a lot, because if I had just read that first volume, I'd be like, nope, no thank you, not interested. So Udon was very smart. So yeah, I mean, this is a not high class fiction for everybody, but if you like a sexy lady warrior queen, then maybe give it a shot. It's not, it's not abhorrent. Finally, for manga, we have a recent Sublime release. This is 4th Generation Head Tatsuyuki Oyamoto by Scarlet Barracuda. This is kind of a sequel spin-off to an earlier work of hers, which we do not have in English, but it's not necessary to read that to understand this. Mainly, the premise of that original is, I believe, like a masseuse kind of sex therapist type deal, and then this character here falls in love with him but is rejected because he has a relationship with someone else. So basically the premise of this story is that, heartbroken, this young master of the Yakuza is sent to a branch family in another city in order to kind of straighten himself out. He gets absolutely shit-faced drunk the first night and is picked up off the street or off of a park bench by another young man who takes him home to kind of look after him because he recognizes him. And then, thanks to the alcohol and the broken heart, they end up sleeping together, and then the next morning he realizes, like, what? Who are you? Like, what is this? What did I do? And then it's their relationship growing from there. He discovers that this young man is someone he has met previously, although he doesn't really have a memory of it. And his interactions with him after that. Obviously, if you're sensitive to dubious consent, especially in regards to alcohol, then give this one a miss. It is in there, but it's not like it. Okay, Yakuza stories in BL, there's always going to be a dark element to it, and there's always an element of dubious consent that I've found. And the fact that the main couple and the main storyline is regarded to alcohol, like making dumb decisions when you're drunk, is not, like, I don't really have an issue with that, but you definitely, like, it's totally fine if you do, but it's in there. That's why I'm warning you. But I will also say the other main, like, sexual relationship in here is very much, it's not a non-consensual relationship, but it's a transactional sexual relationship, which again you see a lot in Yakuza BL, of where somebody will have sex with someone else, not really because they want to, but to get other people out of situations, to, make amends for something, and that is a large part of this manga. So be aware, those two things are in here, but if you're familiar with, like, Yakuza BL, then I don't think you'll have a problem with it. It's fairly standard for the genre. Okay, nothing else. Scarlet Barracuda's manga is very explicit, so again, I can't open it up on screen. But I really like her art style. She draws some very sexy characters and some very sexy sex. I do actually really like the relationship that our main characters have with each other. You can understand, like, why they relate to each other and how their relationship grows. So yeah, there's a lot of good in here. There's, again, if you have issues with certain things, then it's not for everyone. I think Scarlett Barrico, I really enjoy her work, but there's certainly things that some people won't enjoy, and that's totally fine. But yeah, this is one that I've been looking forward to, and we're getting more of Barrico's work. Again, none of them are terrible, but I think you do have to be aware going in, like, what it's about. And that's why I like to warn people about everything that goes on. So, yes. Solid little story, and I do hope we see more of Barrico's work. We do have one more licensed. As for any of her other stuff, I'm sure we'll see it if it sells well, and I'm sure it will. So that is everything that I got for the entirety of August. There is I can't even fit everything in frame. There's so much here. So much. I hope you guys enjoyed this longer video. And I never expected to get this much within the month, but hey, things happen. And I think hopefully my mail service will be a little bit more timely with some of my packages, but I can't really complain. Let me know your thoughts on any of these titles, especially the debuts, because those are obviously new and hopefully people are reading them. Whether you like them, hate them, whatever else, I'd love to know. Give me your thoughts on any of the shows that I talked about, or any of these series that are finishing up and going to be ending either with another volume or two. I really am excited to hear people's thoughts on ongoing stuff. And yeah, as per usual, my social media is in the link below, both to Twitter as well as Instagram, although I haven't been on Instagram for a long time. I'm very bad with social media. I'm so sorry. But yes, so you can follow me on there as always. I do also have a ongoing podcast with my wonderful friend, Whimsical Pictures, Ray. She is fantastic, and our next episode is going to be about Yuri manga. Our most recent episodes, because we split them into two, was about BL, boys love, and all of the history and background there, what's currently popular, the tropes, sort of like the harmful things and the not so harmful things, how manga has evolved to become BL manga, as well as the second episode is more so our personal recommendations, some titles that we think some of you guys may like to try out. And yeah, hopefully if you haven't watched it, maybe you could and learn some things, get some information. I find it's a pretty interesting topic that a lot of people don't talk about because of the stigmatization of it. So yeah, give it a shot if you haven't, and let us know your thoughts on that as well. On social media, I will have the opportunity for you guys to ask questions in regards to Yuri in the coming weeks also. So look out for that. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching. This has been a long video. And I hope you all have something somewhat interesting, some of your favorite series, some other series maybe you haven't heard of. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next video, guys. Bye till then.